Hi there, welcome to the business edition of PM Express with me, Philip Nanfru. Now, on today's chopping board, we want to look at the financial sector in totality. Last week, Friday, we saw the Bank of Ghana's action on the savings and loans companies and the finance houses. And on tonight's show, we want to ask a key question. How do we restore confidence? Is confidence already in the system? Has it been lost? Is it going to be beefed up? Where are we going? That's our discussion for tonight on the business edition of PM Express with me, Philip Nanfru. I have two amazing guests, two friends of mine, to help me sift through all the noise and make you and I better informed. But first and foremost, we want to delve into our infographics so that we can build our conversation from there. And then I'll introduce my guests, then we'll set the ball rolling. So we have the first set of infographics. It's looking at the number of institutions since August 2017 that have gone down. So we'll take a look at that, then we'll continue the conversation. Right, so there you have it, an excerpt from Bank of Ghana's notice last week Friday on the savings and loans and finance houses. And you see that in totality, we've had 381 financial institutions made up of banks, savings and loans, microfinance, microcredit, and finance houses all go down, have their licenses revoked. Now, I want you to look at the structure of Ghana's financial system because we've become what's going on in the banking sector. And we want to look at how this sector is interlinked. Pardon the blurredness of the infographic there, but you see on top we have the financial system. On the left-hand side, we have the banks as we have them, the deposit-taking institutions. So your universal banks, your savings and loans, and stuff like that. Then on the right-hand side, we have the capital markets, where the SEC plays. We have the insurance, we have the pensions. And right on top, you see the non-bank or non-deposit taking, and it's going to come to the left-hand side. So you see that Bank of Ghana's view is focused on too many. If you look at the numbers there, a lot of companies, because they have to oversee both deposit taking and now, as we call it, specialized deposit taking institutions. Then we have the capital markets, which is regulated by the SEC, where you have your stock exchange, you have your fund management companies. And we'll delve into that in the course of the program. We have a public notice from the Securities and Exchange Commission, which I'll be sharing with you later on. We have the insurance companies also, regulated by the NIC. Then we have the pensions, regulated by the National Pensions Regulatory Authority. And if you look at the lines in there, the lines don't suggest from this pictorial description that they're all interlinked. But if you look at it, you see that what happens in one part will obviously affect. And just look at this. Banks are storehouses for all funds in the country. So fund managers, insurance companies, pension funds, everyone keeps their money with the bank. So whatever happens in the banking sector tends to affect a lot of things. And now we've seen the savings and loans being the last hit. And we saw a notice again this week from the Bank of Ghana that they are going to enforce the deadline for rural and community banks and microfinance institutions to meet their minimum capital requirements by February 2020. So that's just a snapshot of the financial system in Ghana. Now, I want us to move on to a discussion my colleague George Rafi had with the former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Esiama. And we'll be playing a portion where he talks about solutions to the challenges in the sector. Let's listen to that, then we'll set the ball rolling.
But as I said, it's regrettable, the kind of figures that they are throwing about. When I think of it, there was no way we would have got anything anywhere close to that. But given the opportunity again, number one, as I said, there will be a cap on the number of banks at any time. And we'll have to debate whether it can be a permanent cap or it should be a temporary one or a rolling one, but certainly there needs to be a cap. And you know why I'm saying that?
Right.
The pressure that is put on the governor for new licenses, you have no idea.
Tell me.
Ask Dr. Addison.
Tell me the pressure.
Just call her and ask him how many.
The pressure that was put on
I'm
you to give
saying,
license
ask
when he
Dr.
knew that it
Addison.
was not genuine.
Ask Dr. Addison how many new banks want to start and what his opinion are about them. I'm telling you, on his table there. You see, and when people want such things, there are different ways to put pressure on you.
Political pressure,
Church pressure, all kinds of things.
Your in-laws pressure.
Exactly. You know, and then normally they would go for certain powerful individuals in society. So you become the loner, you know, determine whether to give it to them. And yet if something goes wrong, you get the bashing. So I'm pleading that why don't we put a cap on it? That will protect the governor. The governor, then I can say, look, my hands are tied. For the next 5 years, we can't have any new licenses. So go to the stock exchange and start buying up shares there. That will be the first thing I will call for. That will be the first thing I'll call for. Because as I sit here, I hear there are some new banks about to open. And one of them, I know the directors, the people involved. That will be another issue. You know, but the moment you have that legislated, so that is why if I had the power, one of the first things I would do would be to review Act 930. We did that act, so I know it like anything. We'll review that act, we'll put a provision there that sort of regulates the number of licenses we can give at any time. That way, the governor is protected, his hands are strengthened, whatever political regime, he can stand the pressure. Church pressure, whatever, he can stand it. Then number two, if you look at the way the receivership process, you know, and the whole, you know, administration has gone on, particularly with Unibank, you notice that any bank that goes into administration will certainly go into liquidation. But that is not the intention. The intention should be that when a bank goes into problems, they file for bankruptcy. So more or less, they go into administration. The administrator tries to run things, turn things around. It is when he's not able to do it that a liquidation happens. Are you understanding it? But the way the law is structured, it's, you know, so we need to look at that again. Then number three, there needs to be a provision there that makes it, prohibits the case where an administrator becomes a receiver. You see, it's one of the issues that have come up with the conflict of interest, which is real, because that's what I'm telling you now. If you go and you went and took over Unibank, there's a key person who is the real elephant in the room, who, if depositors see, they will build their confidence, etc. But you refuse to work with him. More or less telling depositors that we are fighting the man. They will take their monies out in droves. And then you are forced to pour in, you know, Bank of Ghana's additional support. You can ask Bank of Ghana how much liquidity support they gave after the administration process. How much they give. You are blaming me. But find out how much they give under the administration process. Just find out for me. During that 6 months, ask them how much support did you pour into Unibank. Are you understanding it? So we need to tweak that law again. We did a law, so I have a clear understanding what we need to do about it again. Then number four, we need some other regulatory institutions. Like I told you, it's good to promote financial inclusion. Over the years, we've tried to encourage, you know, all these different segments of players in the industry. Microfinance people, savings and loans, all that. We wanted all of them to thrive alongside the banks. And the idea was that there are different Ghanaians. There are the smaller people, there are the market women, they want more flexibility, so let those other people exist. We need to find a way of making that clear in the law. And so if I had my way, I would say there should be a separate, I call it a microfinance regulatory authority.
Do you support calls that the banking supervision should be independent or should be kind of semi-autonomous or, you know, I think you support that?
I support it, but it's in a different way.
Bank of Ghana's cash cow, so we should
no, not at all. I support it, but let me tell you what the trend is. You notice that the trend, if you go to South Africa, they've done it. You know, UK and other countries, they've done it. We need to convert the banking supervision department into what they call a prudential authority.
Right, so Dr. Johnson Isiama, the former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, with my colleague George Weafe. A lot of insight there, and we will need to break this down and see what we can learn from there. Is there anything indeed we can learn from the former Deputy Governor? And to help me do that, my first guest, Nana Osei Bonsu, CEO of the Private Enterprise Federation, our friend here on PM Express, the Business Edition, and Trinidad Kodiabuache. He is the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies. So these two gentlemen are going to help us sift through all the jargon, make you and I better informed. And I'm going to jump straight to Nana. As the video was playing, I saw Nana writing notes copiously. If I can see, he also doing the same, as if we were in class and we were competing. So, Nana and TK, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to start with Nana. So, the former Deputy Governor has made a lot of, he has given a lot of insight, capping off the number of licenses we give. He spoke about the receivership process. And one thing he mentions, why should an administrator become a receiver? And he also talks about the need for other regulatory institutions to augment the work of the Bank of Ghana. And what stands out from you from what
I mean, the administrator becoming a receiver, you can be a judge and jury. He says you couldn't help it and now you can execute it. No, it shouldn't happen at all. But my key area is the pressure he thinks comes on the governor. Pressure.
For licenses.
If the governor is a professional, there's no pressure. The laws guides you. You're supposed to do A, B, C, D. If they don't meet the requirements, you don't license them. So you can't tell me the governor is under pressure from churches, from politicians. No, that's unacceptable. The governor should be able to withstand every pressure based upon the laws that guide him as a governor. Now, talking about the banks that go into receivership with the ultimate understanding they're going to be liquidated. Because, you see, we didn't have insolvency law. Now we're passing insolvency. It's in the parliament being discussed. This would have protected a lot of these institutions to regroup, to save from the crunches of the people that are looking for their funding and all be protected for a while, and then they can regroup. But we didn't have that. So the Bank of Ghana's authorities, knowing that you have filled all the ratios, liquidity ratio, the ability to pay depositors and all, gives them the authority to liquidate you. Fine. But to me, why did we get here? How did Bank of Ghana allow these things to happen? Take their eyes off the ball. These things didn't occur overnight. It's a consistent erosion of all the, solvency and all the best practices in banking. So if you turn around and you say that, oh, because it's at this stage, so we should do ABC. What were you doing yesterday? Fine, we need solutions. The point is, what are we going to do to safeguard the interests of businesses and individual deposits in these institutions? You have savings and loans that people put their monies in there. You have investment companies that took people's money, which was supposed to be long-term investments. Then instead of using that to invest in businesses, they turn around and pack them. We call them packing. Pack them in savings and loans institutions, pack them in micro institutions, where the intermediation, there's finder's fees and all those kind of unsavory activities happening. So how do we prevent those things happening? But first and foremost, as you said, we're going to talk about the confidence in the system. Yeah. If people don't get their monies within the immediate future, we're going to definitely give the terminal prognosis to the banking sector or the financial sector, because a lot of assets are locked up and businesses are failing left and right and they're laying off employees. So it's a total, absolute chaos unless the people responsible, Bank of Ghana, especially SEC. What has SEC been doing? They issue statements, we're protecting, we're doing X and Y. They have been in the know of most of these institutions that were failing. Back in May 2018, they issued a public information about the risks inherent in some of these institutions. Did they suspend their licenses? No. Have they done any, what I call supervision, on-site examination? How many institutions that have failed had on-site visits from banking supervision? Nothing. And we just sit and they provide reports. The reports sometimes are skewed. We know one of the institutions' report going to Bank of Ghana had what I call outside of the book investments of about 3.7 billion. But if you are done an on-site visit, the first thing you see is their IT. The IT will record every transaction in the bank, would allow the bank examiners or the examiners to know what is going on there. You don't sit in the comfort of your Bank of Ghana or SEC and expect the reports coming in to identify all the unsavory things happening.
Okay. TK, let me come to you. From Nana mentioned that he's surprised that the deputy governor is saying that the governor receives pressure. If you delve into the Bank of Ghana Act, you see that the governor has been guaranteed his autonomy to operate, both operationally and from the monetary policy side of things. What do you glean from what the former deputy governor had to say?
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening to your viewers. One, he made mention the fact that his approach would have been to cap it for a certain time period. That is how he sees it. And he made mention the fact that there's a need for us to maybe go around, sit around the table and look at a lasting solution to the proliferation of financial institutions. What I'm looking at has to do with, we need to also come up with a policy direction, which to a larger extent, his approach is that let's inculcate that into the law so that it doesn't just become a policy, but there is a law protecting that approach. Okay. And so me, I'm of the view that we should have a second look at the Act 930. There are a number of issues in the Act 930 that we need to look at again. Okay. Even the role of the central bank and how they should go about certain things. They are doing what they are doing because they think that the current law and how it is requires them to do those things. Because if you look at section 123, which says that if a financial institution becomes insolvent, revoke the license, it didn't say do any other thing. And so once somebody has become insolvent, the only thing the law says should be done is shall revoke. And so the central bank also sees it as an option that, oh, once the law says I should revoke, I'm going ahead to revoke. But I'm of the view that the approach, how should that be handled when an institution becomes insolvent? What can be done? All those things are some of the restrictions and tying the hands of the central bank, which I believe that if we have a second look at some of the things, the next thing has to look at, as he may mention, the receivership process. I support the receivership process completely. Why? Because if I was saving with a commercial bank and then I was given to a bridge institution, why is it that because I was saving with a microfinance or a savings and loans or a finance house, I've been given to a receiver? There are two approaches that is permitted under the law. So that they have not done anything bad. However, it is now in the hands of the receiver to make sure that the promise that the central government, the promise that the central bank has made to the depositors, that now their destiny is in your hands as the receiver. If the receiver manages that process well, we wouldn't have any problem. And that is the more reason why one of the things that I've been advocating for is that the people that you want to use them, quickly issue them the necessary documentation that says that you are supposed to do ABC. The next thing is that the people, especially the financial institutions who have their funds locked up in these, which industry is not having access to those funds. If the receiver can now call all the financial institutions and say that I will want to validate all your claims early so that you can continue to serve the other clients so that they will not even rush. Because if I have 1,000 CDs in a collapsed SNL and another 1,000 in an existing SNL which is not collapsed, and I go to the existing company and I can't get the 1,000, I should assume that nothing has happened. But if I go to where it is still running and I can readily get my money, then I know that yes, it was in my interest. These are some of the things that I know that very soon we're going to meet with the receiver, and there are a number of suggestions that we have to make sure that the process becomes more efficient. Fortunately, the receiver has learned a lot of lessons from handling that of the microfinance. And so we need to also support in that process. As for instance, the communication. Some people say that now, TK, I don't trust any financial institution. And Philip, if a customer says that I have lost confidence,
that's a problem.
Don't begrudge the person. The person has genuine concern. Now, this genuine concern, we need to appreciate the position of the customer. However, it is in our interests that these things have happened now than next 2 years. And so now that the thing has happened, let us now go back and look at the things we didn't do right. How do we make sure that we get them going forward? Unfortunately, there are enough evidence that suggests that things have changed. Even how directors are taken on board have changed. How shareholders are accepted have changed. Directors now go through certification annually. Now the central bank supervision, how they do the monitoring, there's complete change. The companies themselves, even how they do their risk underwriting has changed. Haven't you seen a change in their customer relationship these days? And these are some of the positives that we want to see. And then the things we didn't do, we now say, let us do it right.
Okay. This is the business edition of PM Express with me, Philip Nanfuri. My guest, CEO of the Private Enterprise Federation, Anosa Bonsu, and Shoniba Kodia-Boakye. He's the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies. We're taking a quick break. Right, thanks for staying with us. This is the business edition of PM Express with me, Philip Nanfuri. Before we went into the break, we're looking at the receivership process and some comments coming on the back of my colleague's interview with Dr. Johnson Isiama. Now, I want us to look at a customer's reaction when he got to his savings and loans company. He was holding his receivership forms, if I can call them that, and he spoke to my colleague Charles Aite. Let's take a look at that.
Understand it. I can only read, but I don't just understand what they are saying. Unless, when this form was given out, I asked them, who is going to fill them? Am I to fill them and bring it back to them? Or what? They said if I should fill where I can fill and then leave the rest to them. I also asked them, am I the one to go and look for the commissioner of oath? All they told me was that I should wait, fill what I can do, and then give it back to them.
All right, so this gentleman is a pensioner, and most of his pension funds come through this particular bank.
So when he came here, they've locked the banking hall. If they excuse that, the government said he should lock it up because of the insolvent issue. But as I now have my investment over here.
How much is
over 200, and that's 20,000 Ghana cedis.
I have not got any better news from them. So they told us to be keeping waiting. So it's capital unfortunate. Oh, so what are we to do? Is no member has come to inform us better food. This is what we are standing for.
So you're here to get your money?
I'm here for my money.
They said the Bank of Ghana is supposed to give them some form for the customer to be filled, but the forms is not yet in. So we are waiting for the Bank of Ghana to bring the forms.
You say you're here for your money. How much do you have saved?
I have 12,000 Ghana cedis.
So that was my colleague Charles Aite with some customers just this week. And you can see the first gentleman, the confusion in holding his document. He doesn't really understand what's going on with it. So you see a lot of confusion there. And you can see that this process is much to the chagrin of customers within the financial sector. I want to jump straight to Nana Osei-Bonsu and get his take on it. Nana.
It's very disappointing. People who are going to keep the financial institutions afloat in the future are the ones we are breaching their confidence. So in future, nobody would like to put their money in any financial institution. To restore the confidence, the Bank of Ghana, SCC, the authorities, Ministry of Finance and Government should make sure that every depositor who has monies locked up in any of these institutions should be made to get their money as soon as possible. Because unless we do that, the ripple effect going to the future will be detrimental to financial intermediation. And it's going to affect our businesses. I'm sitting here talking about this because of businesses, not because of individuals, even though we care as people. But unless we restore the confidence, nobody is going to put their money in the system. And how do we restore the confidence? Float the money. You said you have receivers, administrators who have been given some funds to. What are they waiting for? Who are they looking at? If they don't have capacity, why did you appoint them receivers? They should know what to do. So to me, seeing pensioners and individuals and businesses, you know how many businesses come to my office every day looking that, Nana, we locked up, I can't find anything, what can you do for? We're not in the business, or we don't have the resources to help.
That, yeah.
But we have the voice to let government know that this is not right. And if we don't do now that we have CFTA coming, how does the private sector engender itself to be able to compete? Private sector bread and butter is money and technical expertise. And if we don't have our resources, then we virtually might collapse and fold a tent and go home. So this, to me, there must be an immediate, drastic action of pumping money into the system so people and businesses can have access to their money immediately.
TK, there's a lot of confusion on the understanding of the receivership process. You could hear a certain gentleman saying that they said the Bank of Ghana is bringing forms. I'm sure there's a distinction between the central bank and the receiver. I'm sure even though they may work together, in the end, the receiver stands on his own. What do you make of what the people of Ghana who actually put their funds in there are saying?
Thank you very much. I'm deeply concerned and worried about customers who are frustrated because of the receivership process. It should not create any kind of challenge. Some people will be calling you, sending you messages that why should I have a difficulty in accessing my funds that is locked up? On a Friday morning, I could easily walk in the bank and even fill a form and they would take it. Why this long process? Let us understand that now the institutions in question are no longer in operation. The company has been closed down. Now, once those companies have been closed down, now we need somebody to take over the process of paying out the depositors, and that is the receiver. It is this same receiver who will now collect all the assets, the loans that people have taken. That you know that somebody threw a party last Friday in his home because a certain savings loans license had been revoked. He was happy, jubilating, because he didn't want to pay the loan. But of course, the receiver, will chase you for you to pay the loan. So customers who have been affected, I share with your concerns. We are deeply worried. It is never a palatable experience, and we never anticipated it to be this way. But it has happened. Now that it has happened, what do? Let us go to the various places that we were doing business with them. There are some of them that has been locked up due to some of them. For instance, if you take First Allied in Kumasi, for instance, it became a court issue. The court gave an order and they locked the offices, and therefore the receiver will have to go to court for them to come and open. There are a lot of them in the rural areas that have locked their places because they didn't have money to serve their customers. Those places, the receiver has stated that they will make sure that some of them are opened so that you have access to them. Now, those places that are open for you, you pick the claim form, as is rightly said, write your name, your address, your telephone, the account numbers that you have. If you had current account, savings account, fixed deposit, SUSU, write all of that on the form. If you owe them loan, write that you owe them loan. If even you don't write, they will know you owe them. Then you will come down there and say that when you are paying me, pay through mobile money, or pay through check, or pay through transfer into my account, or I want to open an account with CBG. The receiver is using CBG to do the payout. And so when you take which one of how you want to be paid, then you sign or you thumbprint, whatever you want to do. hand it over to them, add a copy of your ID. You go with your ID to verify that you are really the person you are talking about, you are the account holder. Do you have anything that shows that the account was for you? Maybe your pay slip or bank statement or passbook, anything. Now join the queue, let them take the documents, go home. Now when you go home, they are going to use from now to 12th June and September to receive all the forms. After they have received it, then they will now vet it or do what they call validation. Then after the validation, oh yes, as we speak, the receiver stated just this week that they have validated about 150, they have received 152,000 forms and have worked on 80,000, which is about 600 million. My concern was, if you have validated 600 million, why have you paid only 30 million? As Nana was saying, if you have validated, pay. As you validate and you pay, then the people confidence comes up. But if you are waiting to do everything, by the time you get to all the 152 you have received to validate, the business has collapsed. Don't forget that the SEC-regulated companies, some of them are also collapsing because their funds have not been released. Do you know that there was a certain finance house that had its investment locked up in the collapsed microfinance company? And the central bank said, because those companies have collapsed, your investment is impaired. Is it true? Yes, it's true. It's impaired. Then the finance house said that, let the receiver pay me some.
Yes.
And when they pay you some, you will move from negative to positive. And their license was revoked when? Last Friday. And this Wednesday, the receiver said, I have validated all, and I'm paying you all your money. Come for it.
So then there's clearly an issue, a big conundrum.
Yes. Do you get it? So
verify before you
if they had received the money that the receiver was supposed to have given them early, they wouldn't have had the liquidity challenge they were having, which goes to buttress what Nana is saying, that if we want industry to continue to run, let us release the money and let us support the process.
So you're advocating for a quicker dispensation of the funds?
More than even yesterday.
Okay. I want us to tie in the issue of possible and potential business collapses and the confidence in the system. If we have the SEC's statement, we can pull it up and delve into it just a bit, and then we will continue the conversation from there. So the SEC public notice to the investing public, it was released today, 22nd August 2019. And essentially, the SEC is calming our nerves, and then the SEC deals with the fund management companies, asset management companies, etc. And they are essentially telling us that some of these fund managers, like where you go to invest your funds, not deposit, not a bank, a fund manager. So most of these companies have a name, for example, Gold Coast Fund Management. They'll have such names attached to it. You go there, they play with the money a bit and give you something in the end. Some of these companies are exposed to these savings and loans, finance houses, microfinance, and banks. So the crux of the SEC statement is, and I want to pick one part, and it says, once again, we wish to reiterate that there is no need for panic withdrawals, as the Commission is committed to ensuring a sound, efficient, and robust market where investors' funds are protected. There are well-run and sound licensed asset management companies and fund management companies, and investors can confirm by asking a few questions regarding their governance practices, their track record, staff turnover, any unresolved complaints, and regulatory breaches. The SEC goes on to put a toll-free number there for you and I to call, and their website, and it ends by saying, SEC, ensuring investor protection. So this just coming from one of the regulators of the financial system, like we displayed earlier on in our infograph. There's the Financial Stability Advisory Council, where all the 4 regulators, together with the Ghana Deposit Protection Corporation, are supposed to come together and meet and all be in congruence when it comes to matters of the financial system. So that's just something small from the SEC, public notice to the investing public. I ask myself the issue of confidence, tying both to business improvement and business confidence, and restoring the confidence in the system. And I ask myself, such notices, will it go to allay the fears of the investing public and the depositing public? And let me start with you.
If it's accompanied by practical action, accompanied by releases, where was SEC when all this was happening? Now you're coming back to say where investors' funds are protected, where investors' funds are available to them. They put their money to retrieve it at certain times of their business cycle. And if they cannot get that, they cannot continue in business. So talking about being protected, in what ways? And as I said, this is almost too late, but still some kind of solution to boost confidence. But accompany that directives or notices with action that today, tomorrow, the next day, these are the releases to the business community, to their depositors and all. So the confidence is, oh, yes, indeed, what they're saying, they're doing. But don't say and go home and sit down and sleep and say that it's protected. It's, yes, behind the vault, but the people don't want the money behind the vault. They want the money in their hands. So the action of SEC should be a little more proactive and practical to make sure that people, because you see, my fear is the confidence level. If I have a son and he's coming up looking through what has happened, and this happened 2 years ago, where somebody's money was locked up and couldn't get their redemption, and says, I told you so, don't put your money in the banks. Now, a lot more people, but we can do a lot to restore the confidence by speedy action, not delayed reaction and notices. The notices should, as I said, be accompanied by practical releases and actions so to boost the confidence of people and businesses. I'm looking at businesses because the repercussion is if business fails, then the employees go home. The employees go home, that's liquidity in the family, crisis in the family. So the ripple effect of this action should be avoided at all costs by making sure that if the receivers don't have capacity, boost their capacity to enable them to vet all the accounts that they have received and make sure that they are released on time. I had a meeting with the governor some time ago. And he said, we've pumped in some money and we've called them. Make sure that you release the money. We cannot just keep waiting, doing trickle-down analysis because it doesn't help the confidence of the people.
TK, let me pick one for you. Pick one from you, I beg your pardon. We've been told that confidence has been boosted again in the banking sector. But here we have again a shake-up in the savings and loan sector. Is it safe to assume, and if you can share with us, people will be picking their funds? I got calls last 2 weeks from a gentleman all the way in Takrady asking me where now he should place his funds. I'm not an investment advisor. I can't give him that advice. But he's asking me where he should place his funds. Now he's asking me, should he go for all his funds, all his investments everywhere, and go put it in his house? Or should put it in a bank? Or he should go for a domestic bank? Should he go for it? He was so confused. And he had nothing. He really had nothing to do. From where you sit, even from the savings and loan sector, deposits, withdrawals, etc. Can you tell us anything from there?
Okay, thank you very much. This is a huge concern to industry, and I know it's also a concern to the regulator itself. The regulators are also deeply concerned about the challenges and the confidence, but we have all been expecting that certain actions be taken, and eventually it has taken place. And once those events have taken place, the actions that we were waiting for have taken place. Let us now look at, going forward, how do I support a good and better financial institution? As we speak, the central bank has announced in its release that we have completed the cleanup, the cleaning of the cobwebs and rearrangement of the chairs and the bed and all that. They say they have finished. You see, before last Friday, our biggest fear and challenge was the uncertainty you hear somebody say, the savings and loans are next, we are going to come after them, we are going to do this. And everybody was afraid, they were taking their monies. Now, all those statements have ended and they say, we have finished. Fortunately, if we pick the release from the SEC, you realize that the last paragraph there, it states some things that will be key and useful for our viewers, that going forward, ask some few questions about regarding their governance practices. Ask about their track record, the staff turnover. Are there unresolved complaints and regulatory breaches? Somebody will say, how will I, as an ordinary customer, know all these things?
True.
And that is why regulators going forward and industry, our people, the banks, the microfinance, rural banks, we all need to get the media on board, go to the industry, let them understand how these things are done. You know that if a customer comes to you to complain, how do you even receive the complaint? How do you even give feedback to the customer?
Okay.
These are some of the new things we see in the industry, and it is our expectation that it will yield better results.
Okay. Okay. Speaking of industry, I'm informed we have Madam Kokui Adu. She's the Executive Secretary of the Association of Finance Houses here in Accra. And she's going to be speaking to us. I think she has something to share. She's been following our conversation. Hello, Madam. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on PM Express Business Edition.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Edu. So, I trust you've been following our conversation. Is there, given the range of things we've discussed, from the Deputy Governor, former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, his calls for a real look at the receivership process, etc. What in there and during our discussion stands out for you?
Thank you. Well, you're almost at the end of the program, so I'll keep it brief. But right now, I think one of the biggest concerns that finance houses will have is how the receiver handles their issues going forward, particularly with the experience that we've had under the previous situation when the bank collapsed. You know, the finance houses have funds locked up. Now, these funds that they have locked up, as soon as it goes under receivership, there's no interest being accrued to them as an interest income accrued to them. And yet, the finance houses have already have contracts with depositors, and they are incurring different expenses to them. Now, when we have the validation process taking so long, this makes the finance houses suffer losses. Now, these losses then create illiquidity problems for them, and we are talking about confidence now. Now, the confidence that depositors will have is if they go fill out forms and receive their money. And if finance houses have their monies also locked up, and they go fill out forms, and it's going to take 6 months or a year for them to get those monies back. This is going to affect their liquidity. It's going to create solvency problems for them, and it's going to affect the confidence that we are working so hard at right now. So we pray that the receiver will have some arrangements with the finance houses, expedite the validation process, work with them, and get this all moving very, very quickly, so that whatever is left of the confidence, however small, size of confidence is left right now, does not get anywhere. So this is what finance houses would like to see happening, and we are trying to engage the receiver so that we can work together on this and work very, very quickly on this right now.
Madam Edu, I like your call for the finance houses, for the receiver to speed up the process of releasing funds to the finance houses. I think that will work to the benefit of the finance houses and then your clients as a whole. I want to ask you just one more thing before I let you go. What's your word to all your customers and clients out there, particularly in the finance houses?
The customers of finance houses?
Yes. What's your parting word to them? What advice do you have to them to calm their nerves and keep them on the right track so that there are no further panic withdrawals or anything like that in the system?
That they should trust what the DOG has done up to this point. They should trust what the regulator has put in place and trust that we are all working together. We want the financial sector to thrive, and therefore, just be confident, be patient, and let this process work.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for joining us. That was Madam Kokui Edu, I beg your pardon. She's Executive Secretary of the Association of Finance Houses, and she's telling all customers of finance houses, become, trust the process, don't go running about for your funds. We're taking a quick break. This is the business edition of PM Express. My name is Philip Nanfuri. My guest, Nana Osei-Bonsu, CEO of Private Enterprise Federation, and Twenebo Akodi-Abuakye. He's the Secretary of the Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies. We'll be right back. Right, welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. We're at the tail end of our conversation. I'm going to take my guest final comments. I'll start with Twenebo Akodi-Abuakye. Final comments on the issues in the sector.
Okay, we want to assure the customers that new day has come. We have identified the wrongs. We know where we fail. They should trust us once more time, and that we're going to do far better tomorrow. Now, our relationship with the regulators have improved. The same thing, the work of the regulators too, they have changed a whole lot of things to improve it. The receivership process, let's all support it and bring it to a perfect completion. We are going to help the receiver do its work, and we are open to support anybody that comes to our banking halls to do business as far as the savings and loans concern is concerned.
Thank you very much. And also,
Tiki, I like what you said, but if I can get today, my confidence in you tomorrow is eroding. But the point is, all these things that are happening, we can do a better job. I'm appealing directly to the hierarchy of government to make sure that we provide liquidity across board to all the depositors whose monies are locked up to be released. The back office operations like validation or authentication and all can be done. And then we can collect the assets down tomorrow. But if we want the banking and financial industry to survive and to be patronized by people, let's make sure that no cross-related funds are released, but institutional, businesses, and individual funds that can be identified. Money should be made available upfront, and then we talk about the back office operations tomorrow.
Okay, so my guests are telling you guys to stay calm. Twenebo Akodi-Abuakye, he's the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies. He's asking you to stay cool. Nana Osei-Bonsu, CEO of the Private Enterprise Federation, is also asking that liquidity be pumped into the system. We had Madam Kokui Edu, who is the Executive Secretary of the Association of Finance Houses, asking that all finance house customers also remain calm. And my name is Philip Nanfuri, and this has been the business edition of PM Express. I hope you've been well informed, and do have a good night.